Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Today we're doing the deep dive on the Thunderdrake. We'll discuss its talent skill, how it works, as well as the additional skills you can use to supplement that talent skill depending on your build. In fact, we'll talk through some of the common builds, including the most common build that I think most players should use and will end up using. And finally, we'll discuss my thoughts on the Thunderdrake and what it means for the warpet system going forward. Okay, and we'll start with the talent skill Thunder Rush. Honestly, not too difficult to understand. The basic thing you got to grasp about Thunder Rush is it does two things. The first is single target damage to whatever you're targeting, obviously based on your strength. The second thing is it gives you a buff based on the type of legion you're leading, right? So if it's an infantry legion, you get defense. A cav legion gets attack. Marksmen get normal attack damage, and then magic units get skill damage, okay? It's base for 3 seconds, but that can be increased. We'll talk about that later on. The strength increases the damage factor. It does not affect the buff at all. And the Thunderdrake's a little interesting in that it does not follow the typical attributes for certain classes, right? So like every mage pet loves intelligence and spirit. Infantry pets love strength and endurance. Cav pets, and archer pets, they love agility, etc. It doesn't work like that. This pet, depending on the build, can use any attribute. So if you have this build out for a mage pet, you're going to want to increase the strength very high because that's what Thunder Rush depends on. Okay, so let's look at the skills here. The first, we'll talk about Advanced and Intense Thunder Rush. These are the skills that directly modify the talent skill. Advanced Thunder Rush, very straightforward, just increases the damage dealt by Thunder Rush. Intense Thunder Rush works on the other half of the mechanic. It increases the duration of the buff you get. So the basic thing is you're either going to build this pet out to do damage or you're going to build this pet out to buff your legions. And so you're going to want either Advanced Thunder Rush or Intense Thunder Rush, but probably not both, okay? After you get through those skills, the skills really fall into 3 big buckets, all right? Bucket 1 is direct pet damage. Bucket 2 is Legion buff mechanics. And buff 3 is like random miscellaneous crap that doesn't work very well. Okay, and the first package we'll talk about is the Electric Overload package. This is interesting, right? So the base skill Electric Overload, whenever you do damage with your war pet, you get a little synergy buff. A little asterisk on that. We'll talk about more of that later on. And basically, the next time you do damage with your war pet, you do a lot of extra damage. All right, so pretty good. Very good in a long fight, presuming you can get 2 talent skill casts off, unless you can take Intense Electric Overload. And this is sort of like the follow-up skill, right? Basically, you have a 50% base chance after you cast that first talent skill to cast another one 2 seconds later. Same as follow-up, 10% more base chance, but there is no way to increase that. So pretty good. You can see the damage here at 3 stars. I don't have, spirit on this pet maxed yet, but it's about 55%. You can get that a bit higher as you get your spirit up, but you can't get it all the way up like you could with a follow-up cast. However, if this cast goes off with the Electric Overload buff, it's going to do a ton of damage, all right? The other Electric Overload skill is Advanced Electric Overload. This basically increases the synergy buff even more. So you get this up, you get the 50% chance to get that second cast off, and if it does go off, it does a ton of damage. I think the Electric Overload package is pretty good. Okay, after Electric Overload, the next thing we'll talk about is Draconic Rage. You can see I've got one on my pet, an endurance skill, and there's another one here with an agility label on it. For whatever reason, the designers decide to give you a bunch of duplicate skills that do the exact same thing, but they have different stat triggers, right? Okay, that's nothing new. Like, for example, Angry Roar and Blood Roar do the same thing, but one's an agility skill and one's a luck skill. The weird thing here is they gave them the exact same name. All of these skills that have duplicate names, you can add them both. It's fine. They both will work perfectly. I guess they just didn't have enough brain power to come up with 2, similar names based on this, draconic thunder and lightning, theme or whatever. Okay, lazy developers, no big deal. You can put both of these on, they'll both work. Okay, what does Draconic Rage do? Basically, anytime you do a normal attack, you have a 10% chance to do additional damage, basically an additional hit from the war pet. Okay. This thing's a bit weird. I haven't got the crit skills for the warped yet. They haven't unlocked in my KVK, and I want to do some testing when I get them. But right now, this Draconic Rage, it appears to do basically nothing other than straight damage. For example, this thing, you'd think if this thing goes off, like it should probably trigger the electric overflow buff, right? Because you're doing damage with the skill. It does not. And so I thought maybe a good combination was to get Draconic Rage on there, get that skill damage off so that the first cast would go off. No, that doesn't work, unfortunately, okay? Well, the other thing I thought, well, hey, maybe this causes a normal attack, but I've done a ton of testing with this. I can get no like Legion normal attack triggers the way that like Chain Strike can trigger your normal attacks. That does not seem to work with Draconic Rage. So as far as I can tell, this just does damage. I don't think it's good. I have it on my Warpet now just because I don't have a ton of skills. But when I have like more skills available to me, this thing's getting cut for sure. Okay, the next thing we'll talk about is Stormflow. We have 2 Stormflows. They increase the crit rate of your Warpet. You can have them both on there. They'll stack. That's fine. I think this is good for the pet damage build, okay? Then we got Frantic Storm. This increases your crit damage, right? So this is your package. Stormflow increases the crit chance. Frantic Storm, 2 of them increase the crit damage. These 4 crit boosters, I think they're very good on your pet damage boosting pet. That's what you want, okay? Finally, we've got Storm Blast, 2 of these as well. This is basically just like your generic pet damage increase. This is the equivalent of Tooth and Claw or Resonance or whatever. It's okay. What you're going to find is when you have all these skills, you don't have room for these 2. They're not bad, but there are better skills for the pet damage package. Okay, so that was the first bucket, the pet damage boosters. Our second bucket is like your Legion synergy boosters. Some of these work better than others, but I really like the concept. I think it's a really good signal for what war pets could be in the future, okay? And we'll start with actually I think is the weakest of these boosters, which is the Armor Piercer set. Armor Piercers for infantry, and it gives your Legion and at base 1 additional infantry Legion basically defense bypass, okay? The problem with this is not really on plan for what your infantry legions are trying to do. Like, this is a scenario when you're sending out like 4 or 5 infantry legions together, and you get all of the legions to get the boost, right? But what they want to do more than anything is stay alive. And this doesn't help them stay alive, this helps them do additional damage. Now look, they love counterattack damage, but I don't think this is really great. If this was like, it helped me stay alive a lot longer, I'd be much more excited for it. But as it is, I think this one's pretty weak, all right? Like I said, it's 2 legions at base. Okay, that's fine. Advanced Armor Piercer gives me additional 1 legion per 116 endurance. You do the math on this, you can get 3 additional legions at 348 endurance, and the maxed attribute on all the Thunderdrake skills is 350. So you can get 3 additional legions for 5 total, right? So you can send out your 5 legions and they all could get the benefit from this, all right? That's pretty nice. Like I said, the effect on this is not very impressive to me. Intense Armor Piercer basically gives you an additional defense bypass. All right, this set, I like the concept, but maybe the execution isn't great, okay? The one that I think is very good is the Electrostorm package. This is the Cav package, and it gives you, and at base, 1 additional Cav Legion, like skill crit, all right? Skill crit is so good for Cav. You charge in, you hit hopefully that range legion, you immediately get your skill off, and if you can get crit on that, that's awesome, right? Some of your Cav legions have the skills tree, and there's a little bit of skill crit in it. It's not that great. This gives you a base skill crit, just from the start, and not only your 1 legion, but all your legions total. This is the skill that I am building my Warpet for, and I will have a detailed video on how I'm building this out in the future. I think this one is very impressive, all right? Advanced Electrostorm, same thing, 1 additional federally PvP Legion. If you have Agility maxed out, that gives you 5 Legions total, great. And then Intense Electrostorm gives you more skill crit based on your Agility. All right, let's look at the Archer one. This is the Thunder Arrow package. I'm not an Archer player. This is kind of interesting. It gives you additional damage the further you are away from your target. Obviously, like, marksmen are sort of mid-range, so you can only be so far away. There's no long-range warfare this season, so, like, I'm not going to do the testing, like the Pythagorean testing on this to figure out what the best, ranges. Like, obviously, I think you want to be at max range with your archers. This looks pretty good, okay? Same thing, additional legions, and then additional damage. The Mage one, also pretty interesting. The Mage one gives your Legion and additional Legions Rage generation. Same thing here. We can get additional Legions here and additional Rage generation. That's pretty good. If you have a bunch of Mage Legions at range, sitting back and nuking something, hey, that's great. They love the Rage cycle. I think this is pretty interesting. If I was not going the Cav route, I would try this instead of the Cav, Electrostorm package. But Gathering Storm can be good. As sort of a secondary mage player, I would like to give this a try. Okay, so we have bucket number 1, which is the pet damage package. It's pretty strong. I think most players want to go with that. We have bucket number 2, which is like the Legion synergy package. It's pretty good. I'll talk through a little bit of the weaknesses later on. But then we have bucket number 3, which is like miscellaneous crap that doesn't do much. Okay. We'll start with solid armor, and this is a good example here. You have a lot of skills in this Warpet Thunderdrake, library here that only apply when you're in the Citadel or on Citadel walls. Honestly, they're just not impressive, right? I get additional defense in the Citadel. Citadels are good defensive structures, and if you have hey, we're gearing up for a massive Citadel fight and it's going to change our season, okay, maybe. But from my experience and looking at our KVKs and playing a little bit in some of the early KVKs in this map, Citadels aren't really the crux of the fight. So I don't think these are very good. I'd rather have skills that apply all the time instead of just very limited circumstances. And even basically even given that they only apply in limited circumstances, you'd think they'd be more powerful. These just aren't that great, right? Additional defense, it's okay. Some of these other skills that just aren't that impressive. Right, you have insulating barrier, less Warpet skill damage. Okay. Elation, I do more skill damage with my Warpet. Fine. Steadfast Heart, I take less Warpet skill damage. And then Swift Force, I move faster in Citadels. Hey, I like moving faster in Citadels, but here's the thing, right? This only applies to the one Legion that has it. It doesn't apply to all Legions. And so if I have my Legion synced up and then I give this, when I'm in a Citadel, they're going to become desynced, and this, the Thunderdrake guy, is going to be out by himself and probably killed, okay? We have a couple other skills in addition to the Citadel skills. We have Homeward Journey, which makes your ghost go back faster. This would be great if it applied to all of your Legions. Let's say you have a staff player or something like that. Eventually, your Legions get ghosted, and you want your ghost to come back quickly. Hey, that'd be great. The problem is it only applies to your one Legion. So if you send out those 5 Legions in the staff play, yeah, one of them will get home quicker, and the other 4 will take 10 minutes or whatever for the ghost to slowly get back. So this is unimpressive. We also have some Sev Wound skills here where we got here. Superconductor makes you inflict more Sev Wounds with your Warpets. That's kind of nice, but a skill slot for that, I don't know if that's worth it. And the same thing with Electrical Interference. I take less Sev Wounds from enemy Warpets. I can't spare a slot for that. I just have better skills than Superconductor and Electrical Interference. Okay, now the one thing I will say is these skills on your Thunderdrake, you can swap them out at your whim here. You can see I have solid armor here. Let's say I want to add this, and obviously I have some empty skill slots here, but let's say, hey, Draconic Rage, I'm done with that. I can swap them out, and then you'll see here Draconic Rage is back in my inventory, and then I can swap it back onto the pet again. And once again, I can do this as many times as I want, right? So if you have that huge fight coming up, the Citadel fight that's going to decide your season, okay, I guess you could go in and swap in all the Citadel specific skills. All right, honestly, that seems a lot of work to me. I'm going to build a primary build that works basically all the time. I may swap it up, but I'm not swapping up every fight. That's just way too much work. Ain't no one got time for that. Okay, so what's the best build for this Warpet? I'm going to give you what I think is the best generic build that I think 85% of the player base should use, all right? And it's the generic pet damage build, okay? So obviously you're going to start out with Thunder Rush. That's your talent skill. Everyone starts with that, no issues there. Then I think when you get it, you want Advanced Thunder Rush, okay? You're going to skip Intense Thunder Rush because we're going to build this pet to do as much damage as possible, and Intense Thunder Rush is not on plan, okay? In addition to those two skills, right, so Thunder Rush and Advanced Thunder Rush, we want the crit packets, right? That's Stormflow times 2 and Frantic Storm times 2, okay? So Stormflow gives us the crit rate, and they stack. You can have them both. You want them both on there. And then Frantic Storm gives us the crit damage. You can have them both. You want them both on there. Okay, so that gives us 6 skills. What are the last 2 skills? We want electric overload. That's the base, warpet synergy effect here. And then on top of that, we want intense electric overload, which is sort of essentially the follow-up cast to electric overload. And when it goes off, it's going to get the boost from electric overload. It's going to be very strong. Okay, so one particular strength of this build is it literally works with every march, but it works very well with any DPS march, okay? You could technically use that build with an infantry march, but it's not really on plan for what the infantry is wanting to do, so I don't recommend it with infantry. But every mage, archer, even cav, even elf cav, it works very well with them, okay? Now, you can put in your presets to go with every march. There is an issue with that. This warpet does have stamina problems if you use it with multiple marches. So it'll work with your mages and then your archers and then your cav. But if you send it out all the time, eventually it's going to run out of stamina and you're not going to be able to use that warpet anymore. Okay? And I did tell you it works with every march. That's a lie. It doesn't work with flying marches because the Thunderdrake, besides being a dragon, in seeming to be a fly in some of the media, it does not have the flying symbol. What you're looking for, let me find a flying pet here. Yeah. You need this symbol. You can see the Thunderdrake doesn't have it. So this guy doesn't work with flying marches, but other than that, it works with every march in the game. Okay, a couple quick things before I go over my overall thoughts about the warpet. I went over the Legion synergy builds earlier, and like I said, I am going to do the Electrostorm build, and I'll tell you my build in a later video. But one of the things you'll find with the Legion synergy builds is after you get past the initial package, be it for infantry or cav or archers or mages, you're going to find that there's not a lot else that supports what you're trying to do. And I think that is a weakness of the build. Like I said, I think the generic DPS build is the right build for most players. Why am I going with Electrostorm? Honestly, just because I want to have fun and I want to try something new. Okay. The other thing I should mention about this warpet is it's not really great for infantry. There are some infantry skills here, not only like armor piercer, and there's some defense things like solid armor, albeit it just works in citadels, and insulating barrier or whatever that like are sort of defensive oriented. But I think if you're looking to put this pet on your infantry, you're going to be disappointed. This thing is not great for infantry legions. Okay, one last question that I'm sure I'm going to get. Is this thing good for the rally garrison meta? I don't think it is. Okay, I think this thing will significantly underperform like a built-out Mossrock or a built-out Auric or something like that. I think those pets, obviously if you have them maxed out or near maxed out, will substantially outperform the Thunderdrake in the rally garrison meta, right? This is an open field pet. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, on top of that, I'm going to say there is one exception, okay? This talent skill here, the damage factor, okay. This buff effect that goes off, like let's say you're running mages, the mages get all of these buffs, okay? Now, that's usually irrelevant. Who cares if my mages get marksman unit attack and cav unit attack and infantry unit defense? Why would I care about that? Well, you don't. But if it's defending your city and you have all those legions in your city, then the fact that this thing buffs all your legions with these, fairly powerful buffs is very good. And so I think for this season, this is the best city defense pet, okay? Now, my advice on getting rallied is always don't get rallied. But if you're going to get rallied, I think you want to use the Thunderdrake to defend your city this season, all right? If you do happen to get rallied, please send me a report. I'd love to, check that out and see if my sneaky suspicion on this guy being good for the city defense proves to be true. Okay, so what do I think of the overall Thunderdrake mechanic? I think it is pretty good. I think of the new mechanics this season, this is sort of like the best realized mechanic. And the other thing I'll say about it is, while there is some sloppiness here, for example, calling multiple skill cards the same thing is just like a kind of unnecessary, unforced error, just some lazy work. On the whole, I think it's pretty good. The thing that really gives me hope is they have these new mechanics in here like Electrostorm, like Thunder Arrow. This is a single season mechanic, but these things could be imported into the generic warped library very easily. And if they did, they do a great job shaking up the stale warped meta. So what I hope is they're using this season as sort of like a single season test case scenario to see what works, what doesn't work, and then they're going to take that in a future update, I don't know, 6 months down the road or whatever, we'll see these things in the Warped library. All right, maybe that's some hopium, but that's where I'm at with the Thunderdrake mechanic. I do think this is sort of a good harbinger for the Warped system going forward. We'll see how it goes. All right. Anyway, that's all I got for you today, and until next time, you stay classy, Belron.